So, welcome to this special edition of LiberalViewer Clip Roundup. This is a legal clip roundup where I'm going to be talking about the guilty plea on Tuesday of President Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, where he pled guilty, swearing under oath. I'll show you the transcript in a minute. He's pled guilty under oath. He swore under oath that Trump directed him to commit felonies in violation of federal campaign finance laws. And I'm going to cover this news first with three video clips, one from Donald Trump's interview that aired on Fox and Friends this morning, where Trump claimed that what Michael Cohen pled guilty to in those last two of the 8 felonies he pled guilty to, he claimed those were not actually crimes, which is a bogus argument, as I will show you. And then I will show the next clip will be Michael Cohen's attorney, Lanny Davis, on Fox News' America's Newsroom yesterday, arguing that Michael Cohen did implicate Trump in criminal conduct. And then the third and final clip I will show you will be attorney Alan Dershowitz, who used to be kind of a hero of mine, and I'll talk about that maybe a little bit, but now has become a big defender of Donald Trump against impeachment. Alan Dershowitz was also on Fox News' America's Newsroom arguing that Michael Cohen did not implicate Trump in any criminal conduct, and maybe what Michael Cohen did wasn't a crime. So after I show those three clips, then I will use my experience as a criminal defense attorney to explain why Michael Cohen did implicate Trump in criminal conduct, and I'll use screenshots of federal statutes and screenshots from the federal court documents. I actually used my PACER access to go and look at the entire case file from Michael Cohen's plea on Tuesday, and I have some screenshots from that. Before I get to the Donald Trump clip claiming that Michael Cohen, what he pled guilty to in terms of the last two counts, counts 7 and 8, weren't even crimes, I want to show you those counts. Here is count 7, which is causing an unlawful corporate contribution. And that has to do with the American media company that owns the National Enquirer and its CEO, David Pecker, who there was actually news this week that David Pecker has been given federal immunity by federal prosecutors so that he can corroborate Michael Cohen's story, apparently. And regarding that count, this is what Michael Cohen said in court. This is the transcript. He said, as to count 7, on or about the summer of 2016, in coordination with and at the direction of candidate for federal office, that's our President Donald Trump, I, Michael Cohen, and the CEO of a media company, that's David Pecker of the National Enquirer, at the request of the candidate, worked together to keep an individual, that's Karen McDougal, with information that would be harmful to the candidate and to the campaign from publicly disclosing this information. After a number of discussions, Karen McDougal is the Playboy model who had a 10-month affair, allegedly, with Donald Trump. So after a number of discussions, we eventually accomplished the goal by the media company entering into a contract with the individual under which she received compensation of $150,000, and then Michael Cohen participated in that. So that is count 7, and what Michael Cohen said in court, that he was directed by Donald Trump to commit that crime. And then count 8 is, here's count 8, that's just an excessive campaign contribution. You're not allowed to give a campaign contribution over $2,600 to a federal candidate. And here's what Michael Cohen said about that in court. In coordination with and at the direction of the same candidate, he arranged a payment to a second individual this is Stormy Daniels, with information that would be harmful to the candidate and to the campaign to keep the individual from disclosing the information. To accomplish this, I used a company under my control, made a payment in the sum of $130,000, and it was advanced through my company and later repaid by Donald Trump. And that's a loan, which I will show you through one of these statutes. A loan is also a type of contribution to a campaign. So those are the counts that we're talking about that Michael Cohen pled guilty to on Tuesday. And I'm hoping you could all hear everything I said when I showed all those screenshots. That's why I had to start over here. But now I'm actually going to show you what Donald Trump said to Ainsley Earhardt, claiming that those crimes I just showed you aren't really crimes. And this is the first of the three clips. Donald Trump making a very bad legal argument, as I will explain after I show the 3 clips. Here's the first one, which I will discuss with you after we watch together here.
He said one story, said you didn't know anything about the payments.
No.
And now he's saying that you directed him to make these payments. Did you direct him to make these payments?
He made the deal. He made the deals. And by the way, he pled to 2 counts that aren't a crime, which nobody understands. I watched a number of shows. Sometimes you get some pretty good information by watching shows. Those 2 counts aren't even a crime. They weren't campaign finance.
Did you know about the payments?
Later on, I knew. Later on. But you have to understand, Ainsley, what he did, and they weren't taken out of campaign finance. That's a big thing. That's a much bigger thing. Did they come out of the campaign? They didn't come out of the campaign. They came from me, and I tweeted about it. You know, I don't know if you know, but I tweeted about the payments. But they didn't come out of campaign. In fact, my first question when I heard about it was, did they come out of the campaign? Because that could be a little dicey. And they didn't come out of the campaign, and that's big. But they weren't, it's not even a campaign violation. If you look at President Obama, he had a massive campaign violation, but he had a different attorney general, and they viewed it a lot differently. You know, we have somebody that they seem to like to go after a lot of Republicans. But he settled his very easily. In fact, I put that out fairly recently. So Obama had it. Other people have it. Almost everybody that runs for office has campaign violations. But what Michael Cohen pled to weren't even campaign related. They weren't crimes. And they put the 2 counts of campaign violations in there. But a lot of lawyers on television, and also lawyers that I have, say that they're not even crimes.
If you're saying the payments, if they're not illegal, then why would he use that information for a plea deal?
Because he makes a better deal when he uses me, like everybody else. And one of the reasons I respect Paul Manafort so much is he went through that trial. You know, they make up stories. People make up stories. This whole thing about flipping, they call it. I know all about flipping. For 30, 40 years, I've been watching flippers. Everything's wonderful, and then they get 10 years in jail, and they flip on whoever the next highest one is, or as high as you can go. It almost ought to be outlawed. It's not fair, because if somebody's going to spend 5 years like Michael Cohen, or 10 years or 15 years in jail because of a taxi cab industry, because he defrauded some bank, the last 2 were the tiny ones. You know, campaign violations are considered not a big deal, frankly. But if somebody defrauded a bank and he's going to get 10 years in jail or 20 years in jail, but if you can say something bad about Donald Trump and you'll go down to 2 years or 3 years, which is the deal he made, in all fairness to him, most people are going to do that. And I've seen it many times. I've had many friends involved in this stuff. It's called flipping, and it almost ought to be illegal. You get 10 years in jail, but if you say bad things about somebody, in other words, make up stories, if you don't know, make up stories, they just make up lies. Alan Dershowitz said, compose, right? They make up lies. I've seen it many times. They make up things, and now they go from 10 years to they're a national hero.
I don't think anyone's making Michael Cohen a national hero. But you saw that reference from Donald Trump to Alan Dershowitz about Alan Dershowitz says they compose. That's like that the federal prosecutors squeeze people to try to get them to sing is what they say. But of course, because Alan Dershowitz is a criminal defense attorney, he says not only get them to sing, but to compose, which is to make stuff up. Now, I mean, whether Michael Cohen is making stuff up, that's a different argument as to whether Donald Trump committed the crime. If you don't believe Michael Cohen and you believe Donald Trump, then you could say maybe he isn't a felon. Maybe he didn't commit a crime, although it's not just going to be Michael Cohen. As I showed earlier, one of the counts regarding the National Enquirer and its CEO of the American Media Company, American Media. I can't remember the name of the corporation exactly, but and it's not in the indictment. But apparently, he, like I said, he was given an immunity, so he's going to corroborate what Michael Cohen said. So it's not just Michael Cohen versus Donald Trump, 2 like big liars. Who are you going to believe? But there's also David Pecker, and you got to believe David Pecker and Michael Cohen against Donald Trump. I don't know. You can let me know what you think down in the comments section. But you don't expect Donald Trump to give a really good legal argument because, first of all, he doesn't really seem all that smart or all that sharp, or at least when it comes to details of important things. And he's certainly not a lawyer. But I'm going to show two clips from lawyers now before I do my own legal analysis based on the statutes and the court documents. The first one is Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's attorney. And even though his interview aired after Donald Trump's interview was taped, but before Donald Trump's interview aired, but Donald Trump was already tweeting similar things about how what Michael Cohen did wasn't a crime. And you'll see, I think this is Sandra Smith, the Fox News host, talking to Lanny Davis, shows a tweet and from Donald Trump claiming what Michael Cohen did wasn't even a crime. And Lanny Davis, the one thing Lanny Davis says in this clip, he says there's no question he committed a crime. Well, there's a question about the evidence, but it's pretty clear from the context what he's trying to say is that there's no question what Michael Cohen pled guilty to and what Donald Trump is implicated in is a crime, not whether there's enough evidence to convict him of the crime, but it's actually a crime at least, which is contradicting what Donald Trump said. And anyway, here's the Lanny Davis clip, which I will discuss with you after we watch it together over here.
I want to make sure we get in the president's words this morning because he just tweeted this, Mr. Davis. Michael Cohen pled guilty to 2 counts of campaign finance violations that are not a crime. President Obama had a big campaign finance violation, and it was easily settled. How do you respond to that?
So interesting when Donald Trump admits something by saying the opposite. So by saying it's not a crime, which the law says if you give money to influence an election beyond the campaign finance limits, that's a felony. And Michael Cohen, with the prosecutors, stood up under oath in federal court and admitted to that crime and said he did it at the direction and coordination with the prosecutor's language there that he agreed to. And Donald Trump is disagreeing with the prosecutors with Mr. Cohen's description of this as a crime, the same way he disagrees with the entire intelligence community, not one dissenter in his own administration. So when Rudy Giuliani says truth isn't truth, you just heard Donald Trump reverse truth and make it into a falsehood. It's classic.
Well, in court yesterday, your client said that he was directed by candidate number one, basically then candidate Trump, to make this illegal contribution. It is under Department of Justice guidelines, and Mr. Mueller has said that a sitting president cannot be indicted. Does Michael Cohen and do you believe that Donald Trump committed a federal crime? And if he were not the sitting president of the United States, that he would be indicted right now?
Well, there's no question that he's committed a federal crime, and whether he can be indicted has never been decided.
Well, obviously, Mr. Davis, there is a question of whether or not he committed a federal crime. That does not exist today. I want to ask you, though.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there is no question.
You said that there's no question.
Right, and there's no question that money given beyond limits for the purpose, as it was said yesterday by the prosecutors in the Southern District,
go back to that. Go back to what happened in that courtroom and tell us exactly what is your client saying that Trump directed him to do? What specifically?
So let's say what is the government saying that Michael Cohen agreed with and restated under oath is that at the direction and the coordination of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, named candidate, that the donations given to keep quiet 2 women, which Mr. Trump wasn't willing to sign those checks himself, he directed Mr. Cohen to make those hush money payments, is a federal crime. And if Michael Cohen, with the prosecutors in New York agreeing, admitted to that, then certainly Donald Trump is guilty of the same crime.
Now, that is all true. That is an accurate description of the law, as I'm going to show you in just a few minutes. Like I said, the only thing that I would quibble with that Lanny Davis said is that there's no question that Donald Trump committed a crime. I think what he was trying to say there is that there's no question that what Michael Cohen alleged Donald Trump directed him to do is a crime, and directing him to do it is a crime. And that is my biggest criticism of the next clip I'm going to show from Alan Dershowitz, is he doesn't seem to understand that if Donald Trump directed Michael Cohen to do something that's a crime, under federal law, that is a crime. And so I am going to show you one statute before I get to the Alan Dershowitz clip. This is cited by the prosecutors in the Michael Cohen case. I'll show you in a minute after the Alan Dershowitz clip. But this is 18 U.S. Code Section 2 principles. Whoever commits an offense against the United States or aids, abets, counsels, commands, induces, or procures its commission is punishable as a principle. And whoever willfully causes an act to be done, which if directly performed by him or another would be an offense against the United States, is punishable as a principle. So if you tell someone else to do a crime, it's just like you committed the crime yourself. That is under 18 U.S.C. Section 2, which I will show you a little later, is a statute that is cited in both Count 7 and Count 8 of the information that Michael Cohen pled guilty to. But before I get to that, I want to show Alan Dershowitz, who, like I said, I'm a big fan of Alan Dershowitz. In fact, right back here, you've probably never seen this, but up here in the bookcase, this is one of the reasons I became a criminal defense attorney, is this Alan Dershowitz book, The Best Defense, which has been hiding up there on the bookshelf all this time. The courtroom confrontation of America's most outspoken lawyer of last resort. And I'm like a big fan. That's one of the reasons I went to law school, is because I was a fan of Alan Dershowitz and the way he upheld the Constitution. And if you read this book, by the way, you'll find that one of his big nemeses back in those days when he was a criminal defense attorney that he's writing about was Rudy Giuliani, U.S. Attorney Rudy Giuliani. So anyway, and by the way, when I was in law school, I had a cat named Dershowitz. I have to tell you, I had a cat named Dershowitz. So this is really painful for me to be disagreeing with Alan Dershowitz. And I mean, he's gone to the right. You know, he's gone like taking the Dennis Miller route from like guy I like to guy that I'm worried about. Long ago, it had to do with Israel, and now the Trump impeachment. In fact, I've been thinking that I might buy his book, The Case Against Impeachment, and read it and then do a critique of it. You can let me know down in the comment section if you think that's worth doing. But anyway, let me get to Alan Dershowitz's defense of why Donald Trump did not commit a crime, and what Michael Cohen did might not be a crime, the campaign finance violations. And I will discuss that with you a little more after we watch the 4-minute, 51-second Alan Dershowitz clip from Fox News's America's Newsroom this morning over here.
We're hearing a lot from the president this morning via that exclusive interview with Ainsley on Fox and Friends this morning. And the key question is, and if I could just ask this very simply to you, Professor, did President Trump do anything wrong when he gave Cohen money out of his own pocket to make those payments?
Absolutely not. If the president gave the money out of his own pocket, and that's now been disputed, but we have to see where the facts come out. If the president gave the money out of his own pocket, he's entitled to give $1 billion. Candidate Trump could have announced, I'm funding my own campaign. I'm putting $1 billion of my dollars into the campaign, and I'm paying $100 million of them to women who have accused me falsely, etc. That would not be a violation of any campaign law as long as he reported it. If the campaign failed to report it, it would be on the campaign, not on the candidate himself. So if President Trump, candidate Trump, paid the money himself, there'd be no violation of law at all, either for Cohen or for Trump. If on the other hand, Cohen did it on his own, made a campaign contribution of $280,000 to pay hush money to these women, that might be a campaign contribution, but that would be on Cohen and not on President Trump.
Well, here's the president in this interview this morning stating very clearly that he does not see those Cohen payments as illegal. And he goes even further to make a comparison to former President Barack Obama. Watch.
Those two counts aren't even a crime. They weren't campaign finance. My first question when I heard about it was, did they come out of the campaign? Because that could be a little dicey. And they didn't come out of the campaign. Obama had it. Other people have it. Almost everybody that runs for office has campaign violations. But what Michael Cohen pled to weren't even campaign related. They weren't crimes.
Is the comparison of the Cohen allegations to Obama, is that fair?
Well, only if you think that what the Trump campaign did is fail to report contributions. That's what the Obama campaign was accused of, and they had to pay a $300,000. So, fine. If that assumes that the payments were made by candidate Trump out of his own funds. If he did make the contributions out of his own funds, then failure to report them would be comparable to what was alleged against President Obama's campaign. But remember, it's the campaign, not the candidate, who commits the violation for failure to report.
You know, Lanny Davis, Cohen's attorney, came on Fox News for the first time since he began representing Cohen yesterday on this program, Professor. And he said without question, he stated right here, that Trump committed a federal crime. Watch this.
Well, there's no question that he's committed a federal crime, and whether he can be indicted has never been decided. I think there is a traditional view that you don't indict sitting presidents, but that's an unsettled question.
So a big question, Professor, that seems to be coming of all this is how can there be such varying legal takes and opinions on all of this?
Well, I'm right and he's wrong. It's as simple as that. I've been teaching criminal law for over 50 years, and it's clear to me that he's wrong when he says there's no question. Look, Lanny is a great lawyer and a good friend of mine, but there is a deep question about whether any crimes were committed by President Trump himself. And I think that we ought to acknowledge that there are serious questions about that. How those questions get resolved in the end, nobody can predict, because the laws regulating campaign contributions are so murky that Justice Scalia once said, and he had the assistance of 4 of the most brilliant law clerks in America, he said he couldn't figure out what these laws mean. But the one thing that is clear is that a candidate is entitled to pay as much money as he chooses to support his own campaign, and that paying hush money is not a crime. So I'd love to have an opportunity to debate my friend Lanny on your show or on any other show, and we can see whether there's any question about whether there's a crime. I think the answer is clear. There are deep and difficult and troubling questions, and the criminal law shouldn't be used against people when it's up in the air and confused and subject to questions. Thomas Jefferson once said that the criminal law should be so clear that you can understand it while running. I couldn't even understand these laws while sitting, so they're not as clear as Lanny claims they are.
Clearly
so,
not.
Lanny, I welcome you to come on show, and let's have a debate, let's have a friendly discussion, and let's see who wins.
We'll see if we can arrange that.
So I don't know if Lanny Davis and Alan Dershowitz are going to debate the issue that I just showed with those 2 clips. But I think I'm going to resolve it in favor of Lanny Davis. At least, I mean, like I said before, when Lanny Davis said that there's no question that Trump committed the crime, that is questionable. But as you saw in context, what Lanny Davis was really saying and what Alan Dershowitz was responding to was whether what Michael Cohen said Donald Trump asked him to do, whether that was a crime. You know, whether it's a crime, not whether there's enough evidence to prove that Donald Trump committed the crime, but whether what is alleged is actually a crime. And especially for the recorded show viewers, I'm about to explain why I think what Michael Cohen pled guilty to actually is a crime, and if Donald Trump directed him to do it, that's also a crime. I'm going to explain that. And after I explain it, if you're one of the recorded show viewers, think about maybe going back and watching those 3 clips again and seeing if, now that I've explained it to you, you agree that what Donald Trump and Alan Dershowitz said were not true and what Lanny Davis said was true. Now, one thing that Alan Dershowitz said that was true was that a candidate can contribute as much money to his own campaign as he wants to, but that's not what's alleged. And Alan Dershowitz is he's acting like an advocate because he's not really addressing the fact that Donald Trump supposedly directed Michael Cohen to commit the crime. And remember, I showed you this 18 U.S.C. Section 2 principles that says whoever commits an offense against the United States or aids, abets, counsels, commands, induces, or procures its commission is punishable as a principle, as if they had committed the crime themselves. And so if what Michael Cohen did is a crime and Donald Trump directed him to do it, well, then Donald Trump has also committed a crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 2. Like I said, that's actually a statute that is cited under both Count 7 and Count 8 by the prosecutors. You know, I showed you here's like Count 7, the unlawful corporate contribution, and you can see there's some statutes cited there down at the bottom. I'll like sort of...
I want to make sure we get in the president's words this morning because he just tweeted this.
Sorry, apparently I still hadn't turned on the microphone for that statute here. Can you hear me now when I talk in here? Yeah. And you can hear me when I talk. Okay. Sorry about a little technical issue there. But what I was saying is if this is Count 7, that the causing an unlawful corporate contribution, and if you zoom in on that count, this is what Michael Cohen is alleged to have done. This is what he's alleged to have done and what he pled guilty to. And down at the bottom, you can see there are some statutes cited. Title 52 U.S. Code, Section 30,118, 30,109, and Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 2. Now, I've already showed you Title 18 U.S. Code Section 2. That's this principles. And that says that if someone commands you to do it, that person is also guilty. So I think that I'm not sure why they put that in there unless they were trying to say that they were trying to already refute arguments that Donald Trump isn't guilty of a crime if he commanded Michael Cohen to commit the crime. But that's not the only statute here. Let's see. Okay, so I just wanted to see. I was looking at the live viewers there. Okay, so if you look at the statutes down at the bottom, there's not only the last one, 18 U.S.C. Section 2. The first one is 52 U.S. Code Section 30,118A. And what does 30,118A say? Well, that's the statute that says that a contribution by a corporation is unlawful. See, it's unlawful for any corporation to give a contribution in connection with an election to any political office. So if the corporation that owns the National Enquirer gave a contribution to the Donald Trump campaign, that would be unlawful. That is why Count 7 is causing an unlawful corporate contribution. And now the next statute, after 30,118A, down at the bottom of the information here, is 30,109D1A. 30,109D1A, what does that say? That is the enforcement statute. It says that if you knowingly and willfully commit a violation of this act, and it's more than $25,000, then you can be imprisoned for not more than 5 years. That means that means down at the bottom here when they're talking about 30,109 sub D, sub 1, sub A, they are saying this is a felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. And then if you read what it is that they're charging here, this is that that a corporation gave a contribution to a campaign. That's the National Enquirer buying out Karen McDougal's story for $150,000. That's something to affect an election. that's a crime. You've seen all the statutes now for count 7 to know why that's a crime. So that brings us over to the second count. That is count 8. And count 8 is giving an excessive campaign contribution. This is the Stormy Daniels count. And if we zoom in down at the bottom, it shows us 3 sections. Also, the last one you can see there is 18 U.S.C. Section 2. That's the one that says that if you command someone to commit this crime, you are also guilty of this crime. That's the one that says Donald Trump is guilty if he commanded Michael Cohen to commit this crime. That's the last statute cited down at the bottom of this count. The first statute is 15 U.S.C. Section 30,116A sub 1 sub A. So what does that one say? Well, that one says that any candidate that, except as provided in subsection 1 and someplace else, no person shall make contributions to any candidate and his authorized political committees with respect to any election for federal office which exceed $2,000. So any contribution over $2,000 and giving $130,000 to Stormy Daniels qualifies. Well, that's why this is cited over in, count 8 here, which says that on or about October 27th, Michael Cohen knowingly and willfully made and caused to be made a contribution to Donald Trump, candidate for federal office, and which was over $25,000, and he did it in consultation and in concert and at the request and suggestion of one or more members of the campaign. That's the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels. And then the other statute cited down at the bottom here is 30,116A7. Let's see, 30,116. No, I did 30,116A7. No, there's A1 and then, let's see. Right, this is A1. So you can see how it's an excessive contribution over the limit, and it is a violation for Michael Cohen to have given $130,000 to Stormy Daniels. And the final actual statute I wanted to show you is what is a contribution. This is 52 U.S. Code Section 30,101 that tells you that a contribution includes any gift, subscription, loan, see the word loan, advance or deposit of money, or anything of value made by any person for the purpose of influencing any election. That's why when you get to count 8 over here, what Michael Cohen alleged is that he made this contribution at the direction of individual 1, more than $25,000, and then Cohen made the payment to woman 2 to ensure that she did not publicize the damaging allegations. And if you read all of count 8 here, it talks about paragraphs earlier in the information where it says that Donald Trump actually paid him back. And that's why it is actually a loan, which, like I said, under 52 U.S. Code 30,101 qualifies as a contribution. So, having seen all those statutes and having seen what Michael Cohen pled guilty to, it's pretty clear that he pled guilty to something that is a crime. Well, two things. First, that the National Enquirer, a corporation, paid off a woman for Donald Trump to influence the campaign and then got paid back later. So that's a loan from a corporation, a contribution from a corporation, which is a violation of 52 U.S. Code Section 30,118, because corporations can't give contributions to candidates, and so a loan or paying off Karen McDougal and then getting paid back later by Donald Trump, that was a loan, which is a contribution to the campaign. And then Michael Cohen using his home equity line of credit to pay off Stormy Daniels and then later getting paid back by the Trump Corporation by Trump and his privately owned business. That's also a violation. That's count 8, the excessive campaign contribution, because he can't give more than $2,600 to the Trump campaign, and yet he gave $130,000 to Stormy Daniels and then got paid back later. So that is a loan under the definition of a contribution. So I think I've shown pretty clearly that what Michael Cohen's paying off of Stormy Daniels and the Michael Cohen collaboration with the National Enquirer to buy Karen McDougal's story, those were both campaign finance violations. And because they were knowing and willful, unlike what happened in the Obama campaign where they made a mistake and had to pay a $300,000 civil fine later, for it to be a felony, remember, under 52 U.S. Code 30,109, it has to be knowing and willful. That's the difference that I forgot to mention between what Obama did and what Trump did, because this is all knowing and willful. They're trying to hide this. They're purposely paying people off to affect the campaign and then trying to hide the whole thing. I mean, it's obviously knowing and willful, so that's the big difference there. And so I think it's pretty clear that it's a crime, and if what Michael Cohen says and what apparently David Pecker is going to corroborate, and who knows what other corroborating evidence there is, because we already heard one audio recording from Michael Cohen in which Donald Trump said he knew about this payment beforehand, which of course refutes what he said to Ainsley Earhardt in the first clip I showed. So basically nothing that Donald Trump said on Fox and Friends to Ainsley Earhardt this morning in the clip I showed is accurate. You can, if you're watching this as a recorded show, go back and watch the clips and see if now, based on the explanation of the statutes and the pleadings from the federal court that I've shown you, if now you can see very clearly that what Donald Trump said about Michael Cohen not having committed a crime is false. What Alan Dershowitz said about Donald Trump being not implicated in a crime is false. And what Lanny Davis said, who I'm not a big Lanny Davis fan because I'm not a big Hillary Clinton fan or a fan of the Clintons and the Clinton scandals. And Lanny Davis has been the big apologist for the Clinton scandals. So this is almost heartbreaking to me that I have to come out against Alan Dershowitz and in favor of Lanny Davis, but I've shown you the facts. You should be able to understand the facts. I hope I've laid it out for you. And unless I can see any questions down from the live viewers that there's something that I missed, I guess I will finish this up and I will be back on Sunday, which I don't know if I'm sure this is going to be the big topic on the Sunday live clip roundup, but I wanted to get out there and give my legal analysis and my special legal clip roundup. I hope you appreciated it. Down in the video description, I've put links where if you want to support my channel and my putting the time and effort into these types of videos, you can give me a direct contribution on PayPal. You can become one of my patrons on Patreon. I did see that I got a nice super chat contribution from Kamshwari Kate from Canada before the show even started, so I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you who showed up for this unexpected live clip roundup, and my recorded viewers. Like I said, after I give my explanation, go back and watch the clips again and see if I've made the case that Lanny Davis is right and Alan Dershowitz and Donald Trump are wrong. And anyway, and I guess until next Sunday, when I'll have my Sunday live clip roundup, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.